Welcome to the Elevated Coach Podcast. I am your host, Joel Burgess, and it is my goal that with this podcast, you are fueled with all the tools, techniques, strategies, systems, and insights to become more potent and powerful in your coaching and more profitable in your business. The podcast is a mix of solo episodes and interviews with incredible coaches doing amazing things. I really hope that you enjoyed today's show, and if you do, go ahead and share it with a coach that you think would benefit from it. Let's get stuck in and sending you so much love. Hey Caspar, we are live, and we don't mess about. When I say we, I don't mess about on this podcast, and there's a tradition of the last guest asks the first question for the new guest. As kind of a reverse of Stephen Bartlett's thing he does. And the last guest asked, what are you currently avoiding in your life? So we start you off lightly.
Yeah, straight in with a big question. What am I currently avoiding? Yeah. Can you give me a second to think about that? What am I currently avoiding? If I'm truthfully honest, I would say I'm currently avoiding discomfort.
Yeah, I had a feeling a big theme of today is going to be discomfort, and I'm actually really happy you've gone there, like straight from the off, because this is something I've been thinking about in my mind, the place for discomfort, right? Because on one end, there's this narrative, which I deeply believe in, that there's no growth without discomfort, right? All possibilities lie at the other side of discomfort. Yet on the other side, there's this narrative of flow and ease and surrender and non-action, of the sort of the Taoist way of non-action. And it's something I'm really been considering myself. And you're someone who I look at as someone who's very living and maybe true to the Tao of living in the flow and non-action or non-doing or effortless action. So it's really interesting that you've kind of said, I'm avoiding discomfort. So like, what's your relationship with discomfort?
Yeah, and I guess to build on it, Joel, it's discomfort when it's present for me is always felt in the body. And it brings up old stories. And, it's something that I've been experiencing recently, the past maybe week or so. A particular situation has arisen, which has brought up a lot of discomfort and also really revealed some wounds. And it's been a process, right? But I also trust that within that process, there's a lot to be gained. And, through my, understanding of growth and expansion, it's, at the edge, like you say, of our discomfort and our comfort zone is where we find growth. And so I've been really kind of juggling, or not juggling, maybe not the right word, but really just kind of allowing myself to be that discomfort. And I know the question was, what are you avoiding? And I say discomfort because I have been trying to avoid it, but actually what I'm starting to do is surrender to it and just kind of breathe into it and be with it. And the past, I guess, few days, there has been like the resistance to the discomfort and, trying to, figure things out and go up into my head and be very kind of left brain around the sort of situation that I'm experiencing at the moment. But the past 48 hours, there's been a lot of surrender and a lot of ease has started to come in, and then the path is starting to open up.
Yeah, I love that. And I think on one of your recent posts, you kind of actually say that pain, discomfort is your comfort, your compass.
Totally.
Just to make this really real for readers, like when you say like, be with my discomfort, what do you actually, before I get to that, like how does resistance to discomfort show up for you?
Resistance to discomfort shows up for me in, again, it comes back to the somatic, it's a felt sense. And when I'm when I'm resisting it, I'll often move and distract myself. So that could be, distract myself by doing, and trying to move away from the somatic sensation that is there. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think yeah, for me, it's certainly well, my conditioning has been the doing, the busyness, and I think a big topic for today is exploring men. You work with men, and I think a lot of men's suffering comes from their inability to sit with this discomfort. And I actually think it's important for us to really get clear on this. So, how do you sit with and be with this discomfort? It sounds so simple, but just so we make it really clear. How do you go through that process? Is it a process, or is it? Yeah, talk to me about that.
Yeah. So, and seeing as though we're talking about quite a live topic for me right now, the process for me has been actually when I'm experiencing discomfort, it's actually slowing down. And as you were saying, our as guys, we can often try to move away from discomfort by doing and trying to fix and applying a lot of pressure and a lot of action into resolving a problem, right? And and actually, what I'm finding is that it's the opposite is required. So yesterday, for example, I've got a lot going on, and I stopped and thought to myself, what do I need right now? And actually, what I needed was to down tools and go and find a green space and go and sit quietly and just let myself settle and create some space for myself, both physically and mentally. And that hour and 15 minutes, hour and a half of just really slowing down, focusing in on my breath and my heartbeat, being around or being in a green space, my bare feet on the earth, and just, then a slow stroll through this beautiful garden, and then back down the hill to home. Clarity then is so much more available to us. But it often seems like the last thing, on the list of our priorities, and often it's the thing we need most. Again, today, have a lot going on still, and I thought to myself, what do I need? And I took myself off to the sauna. I've got a membership down at this hotel leisure centre, and I go to the sauna there maybe 2-3 times a week. And it's a real it's a real haven. I know some great people who go there, and we always have really interesting conversations. I've met some wonderful people there. It's a really nice little community. Yeah, just having that space to kind of down tools and go and take care of yourself, for me is such a remedy. And again, I think it's the especially guys think about doing when they have a lot on and there may be some discomfort present. It's actually slowing down and looking after one's self so that we can create more clarity and more bandwidth to then start to move in the direction that needs to be moved in.
Yeah, totally. There's a kind of principle I live by, which is using my emotions as a barometer for the quality of my thinking. So for me, I'm an embodiment person. I'm very connected to my body rather than my mind. So I notice my body quicker and faster than my thoughts. So if I'm feeling anxious or worried, or anxiety is probably, or overwhelm are probably my two dominant unwanted emotions. When I feel that, I use it as a moment of right, pause, notice my thoughts. And I just have a kind of a mantra of just doing the opposite of what my thoughts are telling me in that moment. And what they often are telling me is work harder, do more. So I literally just down tools, walk away. Sometimes though, my thoughts in that moment are are you cool? Take some time off. And it's well, actually this thought is creating this unwanted emotion of anxiety or overwhelm. Actually, direct action in this case will alleviate this emotion. So
Yeah.
it's kind of what you're saying. I think also brings up this idea of, I don't know if it's a Buddhist quote, but it's, pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice.
Yeah.
And I'm really hearing that in what you're saying. It's like, we're all going to experience pain. We're all going to have stuff happen to us that is unwanted. But our invitation is to not create suffering from that by being with it without fighting it. And I think this has been personally my journey, is that this sort of distinguishment of when I'm creating my own suffering versus being with discomfort. There's this narrative for me that, there's no growth without discomfort. And for a lot of my life, I kind of took that as, I've got to be beasting myself at all points. And actually creating so much friction and so much of my own suffering. And it's so nuanced, right? Because there's even some Buddhist quote of sort of, it doesn't get, I'm going to paraphrase it, but a stone doesn't get polished without, lots of rubbing. It totally ruined the quote, but it's, I kind of took that as like, well, I've just got to be beasting myself and, working all times and create suffering. And I took it way too far. And it's just this moment. And this is something I've really been thinking about, is like, where am I creating my own suffering here and actually adding to it? And I think if I look at you, just from an outsider's perspective, you seem someone who looks very harmonious and balanced and grounded. Like, how do you find that balance of challenge and growth and like going through this discomfort, and like where that's intentional and good, and versus like, where are you taking yourself too far? Because I know you've been in that state before, right, where you have perhaps pushed yourself too far.
Yes.
Like, how do you find that balance for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's something that I've learned over time. When I was running my gym business in London, there were periods of time where, I committed to too much. I'd just taken on too much. And I just thought to myself, well, I can outwork and outtrain and outperform anybody. I'm resilient, I'm strong, and I'm just going to push harder and just make this happen. And actually what happened in that instant is that I kind of walked into a burnout state. And, I really suffered from that. It got really bad. I got to the point where I was actually struggling to articulate myself well. My partner at the time was, she suggested that I go and, go and seek medical advice, just because I was really, really struggling. I was tired and wired, and also, really struggling with high levels of stress, and also experiencing a lot of dissociation. So my physical body was there, but then my kind of mind, and maybe if you want to go down this route, kind of, soul body was kind of just, withdrawn by about 10 to 12 inches. So I just kind of could see myself sort of moving around, but I wasn't really connected to my body. I'd sort of dissociated totally. So that was a big lesson. And now when I find myself experiencing discomfort or dis-ease, I know the symptoms and the triggers and the warning signs. It's a kind of feather brick dumper truck type vibe, and so I can sometimes ignore the sort of the feathers, but when the bricks get thrown, I'm like, okay, right, now it's time to kind of down regulate as much as possible. And like I said, just slowing down and creating space for myself, when often I think that actually the best thing to do is just work harder. It's like I've been there, and I know that road isn't one that that is going to really serve me if I continue to go down it, right? And it was interesting listening to you speak just earlier, Joel, and a quote comes up for me, is like, we don't suffer because of the thing, we suffer because of the way that we see the thing. So often, what is actually required is a bit of a space between the stimulus and the response. And when we can create that space, then we have a little bit more freedom to be able to choose rather than react. And so that's something that I guess, instead of it being a concept, I'm really embodying myself. And we embody through practice. So in some way, when I get into the discomfort, like I was taking a break from the sauna earlier, I sort of stepped out, got very hot, kind of jumped under a cold shower, hopped into the pools, nice and cold. And I just thought to myself, like, this is where the magic happens. It's actually like being in this discomfort and then learning to just be like, okay with it. This too shall pass. And actually within this, I'm able to like expand my capacity to be with discomfort without trying to move away from it or outwork it or outpace it or outsmart it, and actually really tuning into like what's the juice here, like what's actually underneath this, and start to inquire as to like why I'm experiencing the discomfort, like what maybe wounds have been kind of rubbed up against, what unresolved pains are there. And that's also been really interesting, so I've had some time to kind of reflect on that and been just kind of bring the unconscious to the conscious mind, and within that there's a lot of growth.
Yeah, I love that. One of my previous mentors said, at the bottom of every emotion is life force. And I know for me, as I've kind of gone in this journey or traveled this journey and felt more and integrated past wounds and gone into my past and felt those unfelt emotions, like it's very hard to describe, but I feel way more online. Like I feel more here. There's more of me online. And it's very hard to put two and two together, but it's unquestionable that just going and feeling unfelt emotions to their completion and not pushing them away and rejecting them has allowed me to be just more me. And it was experienced something yesterday. I woke up and I was going through my morning breathing, and I just felt so much emotion, and I didn't fight it. I just let it be, and I was crying. And for like 10, 15 minutes, like bawling my eyes out. And I touched a very tender emotion, which is one of loneliness. And that's something that I've always fought. For a lot of my younger life, I felt lonely, even though I was with lots of people, even though I had a big family, there was a feeling of loneliness. And I got in touch with that yesterday, this feeling of loneliness. And by feeling that and giving myself the opportunity to feel it to its completion, again, like it's hard to describe, but I felt far more complete and whole after that. And I actually, the rest of the day, I was so much more present. And I know in the past, what I would have done is like push that away, fought it, and then just got into that reactivity mode. So I'm actually I'm reading like the Tao Te Ching at the moment. And there's something that really has like been sitting with me, which is, again, I'll paraphrase it, but Lao Tzu says in the Tao Te Ching, when you look at the ocean, you see the ocean, but I see an empty seabed that's holding water. And the point is like, we are the empty seabed. And all we're doing is things are coming to us and happening and filling up our seabed. And much like the sea gets better and bigger and expands with the more stuff you put into it. And it's like the same with us. We have these experiences which we may not like or want them, but they're actually adding to us. They're expanding us.
Yeah.
And they are adding to the water in our seabed. And it's just been something I'm really trying to lean into, of like allowing versus forcing and going to and efforting.
Yeah.
And it's a dance, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's something in that. How I would translate that is it's essentially by being in these, or holding these emotions, and as you say, kind of feeling them through to completion, we're actually expanding our emotional capacity over time. And as you say, we're the seabed, and we're actually able to hold more over time. The more we're able to be with those emotions, or potentially those, times of discomfort, for example, and that's only a good thing.
Yeah, totally. And I think this translates to business as well. I think much of someone's success comes from their ability to hold. You think of being a coach, how much we're holding. We're holding projections from our clients, expectations, often like transferences of mother and father wounds, or in our case, like father wounds. We're holding our own trauma and like our own projections and our own triggers. We're holding, our desire, our ambitions. We're holding so much. We're also holding thoughts and ideas. And I've had these moments recently. I'm like, wow, it's a lot being a coach sometimes. But I do think also our ability to succeed as a coach is also linked directly to our ability to hold emotions and all these things I talk about. So yeah, it's kind of things that tying together as you speak. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about navigating big changes, because we've had a few deeper discussions in the past, and what struck me from our conversations is like you've gone through some big changes in your life, right? I think you remember you saying you moved to Argentina at a pretty young age to start a real estate business, and then you moved to London and start a CrossFit business, which sold that, and then took some time out, and then you've become a coach. And I suppose, what's guided you in those big changes?
Truth, authenticity, and being completely unwilling to settle for anything but that. And I guess when I moved to Argentina, I was 21 when I moved to Argentina, and I guess that was more around, I wanted adventure, I wanted something different, I wanted to experience different culture, I wanted to learn a different language, I was seeking new opportunity. I don't know if I was living by my authentic values at the time. I just didn't know what they were. But I guess in some way, I was starting to forge, an understanding of what those values were. But let me give you the example. So when I was in Argentina, I was looking to make a move back to the UK. I was starting to understand, or starting to see really clearly, that I'd actually really been just living life by the values of others, very much. You will have, it's good if you have a corporate job and, this type of pay packet annually, and to live this type of lifestyle. And I was, definitely starting to feel like, do you know what? Like making, good deals, or creating good deals for people, and being in that real estate world was fun and exciting up to a point, but after a while it just kind of became a bit monotonous, and I thought to myself, well, where's the value here? Like what am I getting from it, and what are others receiving from this? And I thought long and hard about that. And at the time I'd got really into CrossFit, right? This was at the early days, sort of 2010, and I just absolutely loved it. I was totally obsessed. I loved being in the gym. I loved the community. I loved the competition. I loved the camaraderie. I loved the skill development, being able to see myself progress over time by kind of benchmarks of, what weights I was able to move, what skills I was able to execute, what type of workouts I could do in a certain amount of time. And I just loved that. I could see myself like progressing in real time. I was getting fitter, stronger, but also I was outside of the gym. I was making a lot of changes, changing my diet, changing my sleep, changing, many different habits that really had a huge impact on my physical health and well-being, that had obviously a knock-on effect to my mental health and my emotional health. And I thought, do you know what? Like, I want to be able to give this transformation to others. That's just an amazing thing. I want to create a community that impacts people in a way that I've been impacted by the community that I was a part of. And I thought to myself, at the time I was at a bit of a crossroads, and I was wanting to move back to the UK, but I wanted to move back on my terms. I didn't want to work for anybody else. And I wanted to give back in some way. I wanted to be able to support people and, help guide people through this transformation that I'd experienced myself, because it had impacted, not just my physical health, as I said, but like my mental and emotional health. And that had this, wonderful knock-on effect to, every area of my life. And I guess what catalyzed like those changes was a real slowing down and an inquiry. It's like, what's important to me? Who do I want to become? And how do I want to experience my day to day? And I followed my heart, Joel. I was like, this is what I want to do. And I'm going to move mountains to make it happen. And that meant stepping out of a real estate industry that I had gained, a lot of experience in, and meant that I was moving back to London and basically starting at kind of stage one at age 28. All my friends were, moving up the corporate ladder and gaining kind of success, whatever success is kind of defined as, to those individuals. But in society's eyes, they were gaining success. And I was starting out as a PT. I was picking up dead hours, Sunday mornings, Monday nights, the hours that people didn't want. Like, I was there and I was willing to do the work because I was following my heart. And it's like, it wasn't really about, at the time, I was willing to kind of sacrifice a lot to make this dream come true, because I had a vision in my mind. It was like, I want to be able to open a facility, and I want to have the best facility in London, and I want to create amazing community and really give, the gift of physical transformation to my members and clients. And I was committed to that. And I was fortunate enough to meet my business partners, who, together we opened up Three Aces, and, the dream started to become a reality, and it was a wonderful thing. But, values change over time, and, and I think it's so important to regularly check in with what we desire and our vision for our future. And what I started to experience after kind of, fast forward almost again, like 10 years after I moved back from Buenos Aires, was these kind of like, little kind of like messages from my gut, I guess, or these kind of somatic messages coming up as like, and I wrote about this the other day. It was a question that came up for me, which was like, if I don't make the changes that I know need to happen, what will be the consequences in 5 years? And I thought long and hard about that and thought, okay, something needs to happen. I need to make some changes, right? I no longer wanted to be in London. I was understanding at the time that, physical transformation is amazing, but actually there are ways in which we can go a lot deeper with our clients. And the work that I was starting to do with my one-on-one clients was way more impactful than here's a training program and here's a nutrition protocol to follow. And I was starting to experience, some incredible results with the clients that I was working with when we were talking about, deeper topics like what's keeping you awake at night, what's robbing you of your peace. And like, that's the stuff that I wanted to get into. And I knew that I needed to kind of shift direction. I didn't want to have a bricks and mortar business anymore. I wanted to be able to work remotely from anywhere in the world. And I guess there were also sides of myself that I had kind of shut down because they weren't part of this Caspar the gym owner identity. And I wanted to start to bring those parts of myself back online, right? Or give them attention. And so my kind of go-to has always been this slowing down and creating space for self-inquiry and really tuning into what is it that I desire. Like, am I in alignment currently with my values that again do change over time, and what's my level of like meaning? Like, is what I'm doing meaningful to me right now? And if it's not, then change needs to happen. And I know that if you kind of sit on that and don't create the change that your heart knows needs to happen, that's when dis-ease can start to settle in,
Excuse me for interrupting the show, but I wanted to ask you, have you subscribed yet? I ask because this is a brand new podcast and it will really help me out in my mission to spread coaching as far and wide as possible. I truly believe that coaching can change the world, and your simple subscription helps me out more than you realize. So thank you for your help in advance. And if you feel like this episode might help a friend out or another coach, then go ahead and share it. Thanks in advance, and let's get back into the show.
Yeah, totally. What I'm drawing out from that is like just the importance of values. I think for me, it's like the most important thing. What is really important to you? And as you're right, as you say, they do change. It's a big reason why we're actually moving from Madeira to mainland Portugal, because my wife and I realized like we love it here. There's so much right here, nature, healthy lifestyle, so much right. But we just like, there's something missing. And we tuned into that as community. And we realize that's a really important value to us, and it's missing here. So it's like, right, where's somewhere that has that value and meets that value? And for us, it's how we make our decisions all the time. It's like, what's important to us? And I think without those values, like, we just live this drifting life and we just bump along and we live by default. But what I'm like quite amazed in your story is actually, like, it sounds like you were intentional and had this consciousness from quite an early stage. And I just reflect on myself that, like, it's so lucky that I'm here and started this journey. Like, I'm here by pure luck. And I kind of coined a quote that it takes finding yourself to realize how lost you were. Like, there was no part of my younger self that was considerate. Like, I think I've always been a seeker, but I had no idea what I was seeking. And for most of my life, the thing I was seeking was money, success, partying, all of that. And I got all of that. And the thing that broke it for me, like the thing that the lucky break for me, was actually founding a food tech business, which again, I thought would make me loads of money. I thought it'd make me a billionaire. But what it did, though, is it actually forced me to break down. Like, I had a breakdown on the tube just outside Sloane Square, ran outside, bawled my eyes out, and I was like, something's got to change. And I started reading, and I stumbled across a few books, and I stumbled across coaching, and then, fast forward to now, like, that was the moment that triggered it for me. But I'm here by pure luck. And for me, it took breaking down. But what I'm hearing in your story is, like, it sounds like you had quite a high level of consciousness from quite a young age, like a level of consideration and intentionality. Have you always been quite a reflective and considerate man? Like, has that always been part of who you are?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, I mean, I'm very reflective. I really do kind of take the time regularly to zoom out and get perspective on, where I'm at, and from that place I can kind of navigate, more of this, a bit less of that. This is working, this isn't working. And that's allowed me to kind of maneuver myself, and be quite agile, to be honest, Joel, and I think that it's so, I know it's so important to create those spaces. And actually, if I really think back on it, the time when I moved away from Argentina, what really kind of catalyzed that move was my father passed away really suddenly. I got a phone call. I was at work in the middle of the afternoon from my sister, giving me the news that my father had died, which was, incredibly shocking. And, it was a very, very challenging time in my life. And, the last conversation that I'd had with him was the night before. And I was sharing with him that I was thinking about moving back to England. We had this long conversation, and I came back to England to, we had his funeral, and it had to be with my family. But then I moved back to Argentina to kind of wrap up, my job and kind of leave the country that I'd been living in for 7 years. And 3 weeks after arriving back in Argentina, I was leaving a meeting with looking at this new builds down in downtown Buenos Aires. It started pouring with rain, and it's quite a dirty city, and there are tiles outside of the building entrance. Were quite, they're new and quite slippy. I was wearing leather bottom shoes, and I was running to get to a taxi that I'd kind of called. Rain everywhere, and as I was running, I strided out, placed my foot down, and my foot just slipped, and my whole body weight just pushed through my ankle and just smashed it. And so, I was grieving the loss of my father, and I then found myself completely incapacitated. I couldn't go to the gym anymore, which was my thing. That's what I did when times got tough, or I needed to go and blow off some steam. I'm down the CrossFit gym and slamming bars around and pumping my fist in the air and going full animal. And I couldn't do anything. I was forced to slow down, or I was forced to be with this overwhelming grief, and it was very painful. And I remember just really, just going through it and really slowing down to a point where I started to kind of create this, vision of what I wanted to do and what was important for me, and what brought me meaning, and how I wanted to be, how I wanted to serve, the type of person that I wanted to become. And, that all happened within this space of time. And then I fast forward to kind of 2020. Thankfully I didn't lose a family member, but, we were going through COVID, and all of a sudden the gyms were closed. And again, this space appeared where I was I could actually get slow. I could remove myself from the coalface of my business. I call it the coalface. You're up, you're in it. You're so in what you're involved with that you actually just can't get perspective, or you can't see any other option, because you're so 100% committed to the thing that is right in front of you. And being able to pull back and actually get some space to go is this actually where I want to be in 5 years? Do I want to continue to be doing this? And again, who do I want to become? How do I want to experience my day to day? And what do I want to create? These are the three questions that are really live for me. Questions that I use, the kind of essence of my coaching, right? And those questions really help, forge this vision for the future. But the space is so important to gain clarity, to be able to maneuver in a way that is aligned with, who you are now and the vision that you have for yourself in the future. So I think space is really important. And, in the world that we live in, it's very hard to get that. And I think we almost need to schedule it in, create that time to really step back and get that 1,000-foot view of our lives and ask the big questions.
Totally. I mean, it kind of comes, my daughter's just come back and the screaming behind, if you can hear it, but it kind of comes back to that first thing you say and around sitting with discomfort. I think this is actually potentially the danger of CrossFit and ice baths, is that it can give, I think I want to change gears now and sort of talk about men and masculinity and what men need, but I think it can give men this false pretense of feeling. Like an ice bath, you suddenly feel, and I think that's why men love ice baths, right? It's like suddenly I'm feeling and I'm sitting in this discomfort and I'm getting meaning from that. But actually, potentially CrossFit, ice baths, breath work is kind of like, maybe not breath work, but it's kind of distracting actually from like really sitting with emotions.
Big time.
And it's giving men a false sense of sitting with discomfort, but actually like what you've described is, I think what most men need is to sit in stillness and to experience the pain, because pain leads to change, right? And I think if you're not willing to experience this pain, like for me, I was so lucky that I had this breakdown. Like I went through this breakdown, and it was the moment for me, and I allowed myself to like, well, I kind of had to, but I just broke down, and it was like, right, I've got to change. And yeah, it brings to me the question, like, what do you work with high performing men, and what do you think men are missing, and what do you think they need?
Again, I think it's space, and it's the last thing that they think about when they've got 101 things going on. It's at the bottom of their priority list is actually putting the tools down and getting perspective, because often when kind of shit hits the fan, it's like, okay, what do I need to do? It's not who do you need to be, it's what do I need to do. And the being emerges, where we can start to kind of figure out who you need to be once we create that space. So yeah, it's slowing down and kind of, yeah, changing the paradigm a little bit around, this constant like doing and needing to perform. It's actually like we need to give space to that kind of that more gentle, still side, and create that balance between the being and doing. That's one thing. I think, learning regulation tools, learning how to, move from that heightened state down into like that relaxed, kind of calm and collected place where we're able to think with more clarity, is incredibly important. And, I have clients of mine that I'm working with, and I also have, friends and people that I know who have a lot going on. And, you just, it takes a second. And that maybe it's different for me because I spent, 10 years on the training floor looking at people move. Like I read like people's bodies. Like that's what I did for 10 years. And you can notice when somebody is like strung. You can notice in their body how they move, how they talk, like their whole being is like is tight. And I really feel that in order to make really high quality decisions, we need to be able to oscillate between the kind of active doing, activated forward motion, and that kind of calm and collected, wise, connected to being place. So it's having that ability to, regulate nervous system regulation. Very, very important.
Yeah, totally. I think that whole shifting the paradigm is, I think, potentially what men do around, and I say this because it's what I did, and it's something I'm drawing out the distinctions of, but I think what men do is conflate stillness and being relaxed and this space with laziness and not achieving anything. And, I'm circulated with some really successful coaches, multimillionaires who not only are very successful financially, but they are beautiful, relaxed, content people. And what's interesting about them is they work so little. And, I remember my old self kind of thinking, yeah, but it's all right for you, isn't it? You're there. And, I remember Jim Carrey sort of saying, I wish everyone could have the money that I have to realize it's not the money that you want, or something like that. And, everyone who comments on it's like, yeah, it's all right for you to say that because you have the money. But it's like, no, like actually how to get here is with the space, is with the slowness. And it brings me to a memory of Ray Dalio, who was being interviewed by Tony Robbins. And he said, what's your number one habit that's got you to where you are right now? And he's like, meditation. And he said, the thing is with meditation is there's always a deeper and more profound insight than the one that's in your mind in that moment. And that was like, wow, that's it. Like, that's why you want to create more space. And I could almost see my calendars, like the more space you have, the more potent your actions are. Naval Ravikant, he says 99% of the things you do are completely pointless. And that kind of haunts me, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like so much of me is conditioned to be doing. But actually, the more space you have, the more potent, the more high leverage your actions are. And the harder decisions you make as well. You start to cut off things which really aren't moving the needle.
Yeah,
and you
totally.
focus on those really high leverage. So I think actually we need to really change the narrative and actually draw out the distinction that slowness doesn't mean laziness. In fact, slowness means quantum growth. Slowness means exponential results. And because that's, I think, the message that is going to really land with men. It's like,
Yeah.
what, I get to work less and achieve more?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I mean, let me bring this in, Joel, because it's something that like I just live by, right? And I'm sure I've shared this with you before. But I remember when I was running my gym business, and we had a lot on. It was busy, really busy. Always firefighting, lots of members to keep happy, programs to write, classes to run, schedules, making sure that all our coaches were in the right place at the right time. Just a multitude of things always going off at once. It was never quiet. And I remember we were kind of approaching an autumn, and I thought to myself, okay, I want to see if I can like keep a consistent circadian rhythm by getting a illuminating alarm clock. It was starting to get darker in the mornings, and I was like, well, I want to see if I can like hack, this a little bit. So I bought myself an illuminating alarm clock, and the knock-on effect wasn't actually through the clock itself. It was the fact that I could then switch this off. I could switch my phone off, and I was no longer using my phone as an alarm clock. So my alarm was waking me up, and instead of waking up with my phone and switching my alarm off and then going like, oh, I wonder what emails have come in, or I wonder what like messages and have arrived, or wonder what like problem that needs to be solved or what needs to be done first thing in the morning, i.e. like waking up and going straight into doing mode, like immediately, which happened for a very long time. That was my kind of default way of being. It was like, wake up, what needs to be done, literally out of bed and like on it immediately. have a shower, but my mind was already like, in the day, and I was already kind of, pacing through and reacting really. So this kind of one small little shift meant that I wasn't switching my phone on in the morning, that I wasn't receiving kind of stimulus from the outside world first thing. And I then was starting my day with, first it started with like 20 minutes, and then it just increased to half an hour. Then it was an hour. And within that hour, I was like getting up and sitting down and really arriving to myself. Like, how am I feeling? Like, what needs to be said? What emotions are present? Like, where is there tension in my body, and why is that there? And starting to like explore that, and I think that's so important, because if we mask that over by doing, we never actually get to really get into the nitty gritty of like, what's present for us. And it's when we get into that place of like what's present for us, like that holds the key, like our inner compass. But if you're constantly distracting yourself from that, innate messaging which is coming from the body potentially, then we can get ourselves into a bit of a muddle. So that creating that space, it doesn't need to be like, oh, I'm taking the afternoon off to go and like sing Kumbaya in the forest. It's like you can do that each morning.
Totally. Yeah. It's like it's a real edge for me, right? I've always prided myself on warrior energy, my ability to like take action. There's a big part of me that actually loves it. Like I love getting shit done. Like I love bringing stuff to light and creating, and I love smashing the gym. And there's a big part of me that is really true to me. And for me, like I'm really trying to find my balance of this, like how to hold so much ambition. Like I am incredibly driven, and there's so much, and that doesn't feel driven by my ego. Like it feels driven by like passion and curiosity and possibility and like service. Like that feels very true. I've got huge ambition. and for me, it's like navigating that, but also this deep desire for slowness. And it's a lot of unconditioning that I'm going through. So I suppose like a question for me is like, what advice would you give to me, other men, to like decondition this like deep rooted conditioning of doing, and because there is some power in it for me, and like how to find that balance.
Yeah. Like anything, I guess it's like it starts small, as I did. I guess it's like start with these little chunks of time, and within that is just etching out that space for stillness. So when let's say you create some time and you don't, you're not jumping onto a call or into a meeting or off to work or whatever it is that you're doing, and that time is not spent like scrolling on social media. It's like actually spent sat down, and it doesn't need to be a long period of time, and just getting curious as to what's what's there, what's coming up for you, and I guess this is why journaling is so important, and has gained huge popularity over the past decade or so, in the kind of wellness sphere, is because it does create that space for introspection and kind of self-discovery in some way. So that's really where I'd start. And it's also just, I guess, again, it's when we talk about that paradigm shift, it's about understanding that, it's kind of, it's like the yin and the yang. It's like the masculine and the feminine. We've got the doing and the being. We need to have, we need to be able to integrate both and be able to hold both. And yeah, I really feel that like rest, recovery, and slowness or stillness is the remedy for like our hyper busy lives. And, I think like if we ask the question, like how productive or how successful are we able, or how productive can we, what's our level of productivity when we've got like a busy mind, or when we're juggling, 5 things at once?
Totally.
How much are we actually able to like push the dial forward when we're constantly in that place, right?
Totally, yeah. It's something I speak of, and I actually one of my strengths is my ability to switch off in an instant. Like I can be all in with work, and I'm going to close this laptop, and I'll be all in with my family, and then like my head hits the pillow, and I am out. And I go to bed like early, 9 p.m. to allow me to be up for 5 a.m. But like I really believe in actually living like a sprinter, where you're like all in, like oof, power. But then when you're off, it's like you're all off. And I think a really powerful distinction for me recently has been want versus need. Like, what do I want to do in this moment versus what do I need to do or think I need to do? And that for me has shifted a lot. Like I had it earlier. I finished a call at 1. And I could sense, I went to the gym, came back, and I could sense like there was part of me that's like wanting to do, got some, little tasks to tick off. And I could notice my mind going, you need to do this, you need to do this. And I just slowed down and go, what do I want to do? And I actually wanted to go and lie by the pool. And I went and chilled by the pool for an hour. And in that, actually, I got a lot of clarity and realized the stuff that I thought I needed to do is not important at all.
Yeah.
And so that want versus need has been really powerful. Sometimes it's like, I actually want to work. Like I'm really excited by work here. But I think your point of starting small, either on or off, I think that's huge for me. A bit ashamed, but I was that person who woke up at 5, glass of water, and I get straight to work. Now I wake up at 5, I do about 45 minutes of breathing, dance, journaling, and then I work. So like it's starting, the process is starting.
Yeah, I love that. I'm the same. That's how I start my day. It's warm lemon water with a bit of salt, and then movement for the first, breathing, meditation, and movement, shakeouts, sort of qigong kind of mash up first thing in the morning, and that just like sets a really strong, energetic way to start the day. And it's wonderful. But there's something else that I think that's important to kind of bring into this space, is that like in stillness, that's often where the stuff can come up that is uncomfortable, right? And so this can also be not very desirable for people to enter into. So there's something to be said about that. Like often people avoid stillness because they're avoiding, the emotion, or they're avoiding, the discomfort, or they're avoiding, the truth potentially of like what's there. And so I just thought that's important to bring into the space.
Totally, yeah. Well, it brings to mind the quote: all of the world's problems stem from man's inability to sit in stillness." Like it's really true, and it's essentially what he's saying. I want to finish with some quick fire questions.
Sure.
So, what advice would you give to the version of you that just started coaching?
Yeah, get playful in conversation.
Oh, I love that. And what advice would your future self give you now?
Yeah, I think there's something coming through around like commit to entering into difficult conversations.
Nice. And second to last question, what is your favorite coaching question?
What's not being said?
Love that. And then finally, if you could broadcast one message to the world on TV, what would it be?
Life is short. Live it.
Nice. Beautiful. Caspar, thank you so much for today. And thank you for your friendship, and excited to see where you go with everything and continue our relationship as well. Just for the listeners, where can people find you?
So I'm quite active on my Instagram, which is Coaching with Caspar, and that's Caspar with an AR, not an ER. And then my website, again, www.coachingwithcaspar.com. I've got a newsletter that I put out weekly called the Optimal Wellbeing Newsletter. So yeah, those would be good places to good spaces to connect with me. And yeah, I just want to thank you, Joel, for having me, and thank you for the space and for this wonderful conversation, and again for our friendship, and really excited about seeing how everything unfolds for you going forwards, and wishing you a wonderful afternoon, man.
Thanks, brother. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, go ahead and share it with a friend, a coach, or anyone that you feel could benefit. It helps them out, it helps me out. I think it's just a kind thing to do. And if you haven't, make sure you're subscribed. I'm just getting started with this podcast. I've got so many amazing episodes, so much value, so many guests planned. It's really my goal to make this the one place you want to come to for all things coaching and the business of coaching. And come say hi, send me a message on Instagram. I don't bite hard. I don't bite. I am friendly, and I'd love to meet you and answer any questions that you have and just have a good conversation. And would love to hear your thoughts on today's episodes too. Anyway, I will see you around, sending you so much love, and have a beautiful rest of your day.